Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating places on Earth. It's a spot where harsh, intense geological reality crashes right into profound spiritual mystery. I'm talking about Mount Kailash, hidden deep within the Tibetan plateau. Look, whether you're a physics nerd, into high-altitude biology, or fascinated by ancient religious history, this place is basically a giant geographical puzzle that flat-out defies logic. So let's get into it.
Let me ask you this. Can you imagine a place so extreme that visitors literally swear time speeds up when they get close? A place where commercial airlines absolutely refuse to fly, drawing this massive, invisible boundary in the sky. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But these anomalies around Mount Kailash, they're totally real, deeply studied, and in some cases, literally enforced by law. How does a single mountain command that kind of caution?
Well, to wrap our heads around this, we actually need to start high above the ground. We're going to zoom in on the airspace right over the Tibetan plateau. This massive region is often called the roof of the world, and for good reason. It forms one of the largest no-fly zones for commercial passenger planes on the entire planet. And the crazy part? It's not a military exclusion zone. The answer is purely geographical. It all comes down to basic survival physics. 14,800 feet. That right there is the staggering average ground elevation of the Tibetan plateau. And I really want to emphasize this point. That is not the height of the mountain peaks. That's just the floor. That is the actual ground you'd be walking on. It is incredibly high up. And this towering baseline altitude creates a massive, insurmountable nightmare for any passenger plane trying to cross this territory.
If you've ever flown commercial, you know the drill, right? The safety briefing about those little yellow oxygen masks dropping down if the cabin loses pressure. But here's what they usually don't tell you. Those masks only hold a very limited supply of oxygen. If that emergency happens, pilots are trained to immediately put the plane into a steep dive down to 10,000 feet, where the air is finally thick enough for us to safely breathe without help. But look at the reality here. Over the Tibetan plateau, the ground itself is sitting at almost 15,000 feet. A plane literally cannot safely descend to that 10,000-foot mark because, well, the ground is in the way. It's a complete geographical trap. And altitude? That's really just the tip of the iceberg for pilots. This whole region is plagued by severe, totally unpredictable jet streams that trigger horrific turbulence. The Himalayan weather can shift violently in a matter of minutes. Oh, and on top of all that, there's a near-total lack of radar coverage and literally zero emergency diversion airports. If a plane has an engine failure or an emergency here, there is nowhere to land and nowhere to hide from the storms. So commercial airlines, they just completely bypass the whole shebang. Okay, let's head down from that treacherous sky to the ground, right at the very base of Mount Kailash. This is where we run into our next big mystery, the Twin Lakes. Sitting side by side, separated by nothing more than a tiny, narrow water channel called the Ganga Chu, are two entirely distinct lakes. But despite being immediate neighbors, hanging out in the exact same environment, they absolutely could not be more fundamentally different from each other. The contrast here is just wild. On one side, we have Lake Mansarovar. It's perfectly round, filled with this stunning, calm, turquoise freshwater. It's teeming with fish and vegetation, and spiritually, it's revered as a sacred symbol of light, purity, and divinity. In fact, it's believed to have been created directly in the mind of Lord Brahma, and pilgrims actually bathe in it to cleanse their karma. But then, directly next door, is Lake Rakshastal, the ghost lake. It's crescent-shaped, incredibly dark, and super turbulent. It's heavily salted, entirely sterile, and there is absolutely zero marine life in it. Spiritually, it represents demonic darkness and is tied to the demon king Ravana. It's basically a geographical manifestation of yin and yang. So, what's the scientific explanation for this profound paradox? It all boils down to hydrology. Believe it or not, the pristine fresh water from Lake Mansarovar actually overflows and drains directly into Rakshastal. But here is the massive catch. Rakshastal is what geologists call an endorheic basin. That's just a fancy way of saying it has no exit. Water pours in, but it cannot flow out into another river or ocean. So the only way water ever leaves is by evaporating. Over thousands and thousands of years, as that water evaporates, it leaves all its salts and minerals behind. That constant concentration is exactly what turned the ghost lake into this lifeless, salty void, right next to a thriving freshwater oasis. All right, let's pull our focus away from the lakes and move right up to the edge of Mount Kailash itself, because we really have to talk about the absolute strangest phenomena reported on the ground here, the time distortion mystery. For decades, trekkers and pilgrims making the grueling journey to the base of this mountain have come back with these truly bizarre biological claims that seem to entirely defy the laws of natural human aging. We're talking about visitors consistently claiming that just being near Mount Kailash makes 12 hours feel and act like 2 weeks. Specifically, they're talking about their hair and their fingernails. Pilgrims have reported that spending even half a day near the mountain causes their nails and hair to grow at an impossibly accelerated rate. It's as if time itself has just hit fast forward on their biology by a full 2 weeks. And this rapid aging phenomenon? It actually ties into a very dark, super persistent legend within the mountaineering community. The story goes that a group of Siberian climbers decided to push past a specifically restricted altitude on the mountain. According to the lore, when they finally came back down from their attempt, they had aged decades in a matter of days. We're talking hair turned entirely white, skin deeply wrinkled, and tragically, the legend claims every single one of them died of old age within a year of that expedition. Now, as cool and sci-fi as temporal distortion sounds, what is the actual hard scientific reality here? Well, researchers point straight to the intense environmental stressors of this specific region. You're dealing with extreme, high-altitude UV radiation that severely damages and wrinkles human skin. Add in massive dehydration and the incredibly low oxygen levels in the thin air. These harsh factors cause human skin to dry out incredibly fast, and they make your hair and nails super brittle, which makes them split and push outward from the cuticles. So, to a casual observer, this traumatic biological stress perfectly mimics the visual effects of rapid aging and sudden nail growth. But having said all that, from a pure physics standpoint, time actually is technically moving differently here. It's due to a real principle called gravitational time dilation. Time literally runs microscopic nanoseconds faster at extreme high altitudes because you're further away from the Earth's center of mass, meaning gravity is ever so slightly weaker. Locals have also hypothesized that strong magnetic anomalies around the mountain could be messing with things. But let's be totally clear. While relativistic physics does make time take slightly faster at Kailash, we are talking about nanoseconds. It has absolutely zero noticeable impact on human aging. The rapid aging people see is entirely a brutal biological reaction to one of the most extreme environments on the planet. Let's turn our attention upward now, to the true climax of our geographic journey today. Standing at 6,680 meters, that's over 21,700 feet, is the awe-inspiring summit of Mount Kailash itself. But here's the thing, what makes this peak truly legendary isn't its height. Mount Everest is substantially taller. What makes Kailash entirely unique in the entire world of mountaineering is that its summit remains completely unclimbed by modern humans. The primary reason for this is deeply, deeply rooted in reverence. Mount Kailash is universally considered the ultimate holy site across 4 major world religions. For Hindus, it is the sacred physical home of Lord Shiva. For Buddhists, it represents the home of Demchog, a deity of supreme bliss. For Jains, it's the exact site where the first Tirthankara achieved liberation. And for the Bon religion, it is the fundamental core seat of all spiritual power. Because it holds this unparalleled, intensely sacred status, the Chinese government legally protects the mountain. Climbing the peak is strictly, totally banned out of sheer religious respect. But honestly, it's worth noting that even before that official ban was put in place, Mount Kailash completely repelled everyone who ever tried to conquer it. The physical geography of the mountain is just imposing. It has these incredibly steep, almost perfectly pyramid-like slopes made of sheer rock and ice. Combine that with the sudden violent weather shifts we talked about earlier, and it is a technically brutal, terrifying climb. But beyond the physical reality, climbers who have approached the mountain have consistently documented experiencing overwhelming psychological and spiritual resistance, an undeniable, inexplicable feeling that they simply should not take another step forward. Reinhold Messner, one of the greatest mountaineers in human history, the guy who literally conquered Everest without supplemental oxygen, was famously given the opportunity to climb Kailash, and he flat out refused. His explanation perfectly sums up the power this peak commands. He said, "If we conquer this mountain, then we conquer something in people's souls." He recognized that some places on this earth are simply meant to remain untouched. They serve a purpose that goes way, way beyond human achievement. So we are left with a pretty incredible duality here. Is Mount Kailash just a natural geological wonder, a harsh, unforgiving landscape of extreme altitude, endorheic lakes, and brutal weather that tricks our human biology? Or is it something more? Is it the cosmic access of the universe, a spiritually charged monument that demands distance and respect? We've explored the hard facts, the science, and the ancient myths in this explainer today. But the true nature of this unclimbed peak might just depend entirely on how you choose to look at it. Is it a geological trap or a sacred boundary? What do you think? Keep questioning